personally, professionally. I mean, I literally am getting goosebumps talking about it. Like, I didn't realize, I realized like, this is what I want, more speaking stages. I didn't realize how I was going to show up differently as a human being. And I will say that really was the unexpected.
We are in for a treat here at Red Circle Talk, How to TEDx. We have the one, the only Jennifer Watson in the building, about to just drop gems. I know every time we have interactions, it's like I can feel your energy, like almost like electricity. And it's like, woo, this woman has a vibe about her. So to have you here, I'm just super grateful. Welcome to the show.
Robin, I am so excited to be here. I love talking about the things we're going to go into and just the journeys I've had. And I'm just excited to pour into your community. Any nuggets I can give, I'm ready to drop them down, my friend.
Yep. And you are a 2-time TEDx speaker, correct?
Yes, I am. I just got done with my second one that came out in July 2024, but my first one came out in 2019. I can't believe I'm saying that. It came out in August of 2019. So here we are, 5 years later.
5 years later. So let's do this. Why don't we get in that DeLorean? We're going to get in that time machine. And if it's okay with you, Jennifer, I want to get in a TEDx time machine. And I want to go back to 2019 to talk about your first TEDx talk, Optimizing Your Unique Creative Power. You cool with jumping in the time machine with me?
100%. I love time machines, my friend.
All right. So before we jump into it, I also have to just say that not only this topic, I just love interacting with you. So just to get a few minutes of your time, to get a little bit of your light, I'm just excited about it. But we're going to jump right into the get down. So the first question I have for you is just the framework for your journey. Talk to me about the seeds that were planted for you to even want to get on the red dot to share your ideas. What was there, like an aha moment? Did you see something? Did you always know you wanted to be a TEDx speaker? Talk to me about your origin story as a TEDx speaker.
So, I knew from a very young age, Robin, I just felt it, even like at age 6, that I was meant to speak. I don't know why, but I just felt it in my gut and my soul. And as I started journeying through life, I just heard stories from people that, I shouldn't speak. I can't speak. I speak too fast. I had a speech impediment growing up, ironically, and just so many different stories I was listening to. So I kind of squandered it for a while. But what ended up happening is I became a high-performing athlete, ultimately a 2-time All-American at Wisconsin-Madison. I transitioned into becoming a physical therapist, and my first entrepreneurship journey was in my first brick and mortar that I opened in the 2008 crash, my PT clinic, which did very well. And as I transitioned in all these different phases, I started realizing I had a story I was accumulating. I had expertise I wanted to give to the world. And I finally got to this point, like, darn it, I need to speak. I need to break free from this belief that I've had all my life from others that I shouldn't, and go to my deep heart that I should. And then I started drawing in more people that were speaking, go figure, because I started putting it on my radar. And then I started coming among TEDx speakers. I started researching, and that's when I was like, you know what? I want to speak. I feel called to speak. I feel like I have a story that truly needs to be shared to the world. TEDx, here we come. So I ripped the Band-Aid off and decided to go down that journey of becoming my first time in the TEDx arena, and the journey was absolutely miraculous.
Very nice, very nice. So one thing that you said was that earlier on you had a speech impediment, and that maybe speaking wasn't for you, but you knew you had a message. There are folks out there right now who are finding all kinds of excuses. Somebody told me, like, whatever the challenge is, instead of looking at it like it's the challenge that's preventing you from the thing, the challenge is the reason you should do the thing. So would it be fair to say that maybe some of those early struggles that you had kind of motivated you to get where you were going?
Absolutely. And I'm going to say this. I heard this quote from a friend. I will say this. I believe that God makes you things that you think you are not. I absolutely believe that. And I feel like something that I thought from a very young age that I wasn't supposed to be, like you said, we get into resistances. We hear what people say about us. We get in our own head about what we believe we are not. And I truly believe the irony is most of the time, that's exactly where God, creator, whatever you believe out there, everyone, is telling you you're supposed to step into. I don't believe that some of these things that are supposed to be kind of your story with ease and flow, it may be flow now. Maybe you're giving them the expertise and the things you learn. But let's just be honest, not just on the TEDx stage, Robin, but on so many of the stages that I've worked with, I've learned sometimes the hard way. And I've able to come up with an opportunity, a framework, and a story that can help people that are going through something similar. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that how it always goes? That often we're put through the fire to help others that come after us. And I 100% believe that when there's something on your heart to do, everyone, and if a TEDx is it, if speaking is it, if it's anything else, and you're feeling a bunch of resistance, 9 times out of 10, it's probably where you're supposed to be. It's going to refine you by fire. Maybe you're supposed to go before someone to help someone that comes after you to make it a little bit easier. There can be so many layers to this. But 9 times out of 10, with my own journey and successes, my highs and lows, whenever I've leaned into spaces that appeared to be, like you said, roadblocks, resistance, a lot of it is my own BS or what other people are saying, is when I found the emerald, the diamond, the goods that I could give to the world and ultimately refine and create impact in a more powerful way. I want to be very clear, everyone. It doesn't mean that life has to be miserable. It has to suck. Everything has to be feel like it's pushing, pushing. I'm actually opposite of that. I believe that you can have ease and flow in your life, including if you want to get on the TEDx stage. But I do believe when you step into something that you're afraid of, you will 100% meet resistance, and especially speaking. There's nothing like that you don't get on a stage. And I know you can understand, Robin, where you're in front of people, it feels like you're standing there naked. And that's an area where you can be judged or not. So learning how to move through that process, in particular the TEDx process, which I know we're going to go through, is very huge. But I made that commitment. I knew what I felt was resistance. I was able to move through that in nothing but epicness. Yes, that's my favorite word, everyone. Nothing but epicness came on the other side. Not only for everyone that hopefully heard the talk, but actually, go figure, as we always see, Robin, I actually learned and expanded my genius, my brilliance, and became a better person and healed so many things through that first TEDx journey.
Yeah. For me, it's the same feeling that I have where I almost feel like I got a little better on the other side of my TEDx talk. It was like, I think my initial goals were very different by the time I got into creating and writing and rehearsing. And then afterwards, even like my wife and my kids, like the stuff that I'm talking about is actionable stuff. So I have to kind of practice what I preach too, right? So it's helped me now. It's forcing me to like be very intentional with how I interact with them. So I can really relate to that. So you talked about the TEDx stuff. So let's jump right into it, because people that I believe will get into this show are going to be people who are soon to be TEDx speakers. So they're like, I'm up next. I want as many nuggets and direction and tips that I can get. So talk to me about the actual application process. Like, what was it like for your first time? Did you like go online looking for places? Did you have a friend that kind of pointed you in the right direction? Tell me about your application process.
Yeah, absolutely. And, being that I've done a second TEDx, there was a different way that I did a lot of these steps that I'm actually going to give you guys now. And not that it was way different, but I learned from the first time. So isn't that great to know? First thing I'm going to recommend to all of you, and I definitely had for the first one as well, is some type of coach. The first coach I had wasn't necessarily actually helping me with my speaking framework or my speaking style, but actually get good applications that were aligned with my type of talk. So I had a coach that was doing a lot of behind the scenes researching different places, the themes of different TEDx events. As we all know, different TEDx have different themes, and they actually did a lot of the back dirty work for me. They obviously got my origin story. They got the outline. I obviously had that 2-minute video that many of us have to give into applications. So the same coach obviously learned a lot about me, my backstory, and what the content was going to be. But he helped me hugely. And I'm going to tell you, everyone, it's such a big difference when you have someone help you with this, because what we're going to get into next, the meat of actually creating the story, it takes a lot, oh man, of your energy, your time, your space. So if you can get a coach there, whether they help you with the application process or refining your speech, I will say is almost necessary, because to me, I will say, Robin, even though I loved it, it was like a second job for me. Like I had to set aside time, even if I was obviously having a coach to help me with applications, I was setting aside time every week on working on it, on outline, on repping it, on pulling different stories in and out, on really crafting something that I felt was going to really align not only with me, but what I could give to the world. So first and foremost, since we're talking about applications, I'm going to tell everyone that I highly recommend getting either a coach or someone that has done it before and knows how to access different applications and what to kind of be kind of, I'll call it the sparkly little bell, the one that gets picked, because there are certain ways. It's just like, I've learned a lot of different things on other speaking stages of what to say to get picked as well. And there is something specific that needs to be aligned to actually get picked on TEDx stages. They are competitive. So it's really, I feel having a coach really helped me, because I had no clue. My first one was like, I didn't know it was that competitive. You guys, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I was ignorant a little bit on how competitive it was. I was like, I know what I want to talk about. And he was like, no, it's a little bit more than that, Jennifer. So I got kind of fed through a fire hydrant, like, wow, like this is a process that could take a while to get, actually in. So I came to really appreciate the process of TEDx, not only of applying, but actually building it, because I'm going to be totally transparent with all of you. I had no clue what I was totally stepping into, because for all of you that are speakers or want to speak, I'm going to tell you this: speaking for other and applying for other speaking gigs are over here, whether it be podcasts, small or large events. TEDx is on a stage by itself, and that includes the application process. So I'm going to say that I got help with the first part. My second one, I actually had a coach that helped me not only with application, but actually crafting a more dialed in message. But the first one, I definitely had a coach to help me with the application process. And that really helped take an offload kind of off me, so I could really focus on the part that I was going to bring to the world, right? Crafting the speech that I thought would align with the world.
You said that, applying for a speaking gig or podcast is one thing. TEDx is a whole different stage. One of our guests on the show, she said, TEDx is like the Super Bowl of public speaking. And I was like, that's it. Because even for me, like, I think the thing that made me realize that it was just a full-time job was after the talk, because after the talk, I found myself with all of this empty space now, because my mind and my heart was so filled with like the talk, the message. Like I was running it anytime I was like washing dishes, walking to the bathroom, like I would mumble under my breath. And now I find myself like, what am I going to mumble about now? Like, I got to get another talk. So let's talk about that creative process, right? And you can talk about how the coach helped you, but you can also talk about your actual creative process, writing. Do you go somewhere else to write? What is your creative process when you prepared for your first TED Talk?
Yeah, and I'm so glad we mentioned this, everyone, because I believe the TEDx is the Super Bowl of speaking. And if you can find a process there, I do believe it can make a much easier process for the other type of speaking gigs out there. It's going to be different, but it's still going to help you refine. Before I go through my process, I will say this: the reason why TEDx for me was so unique was three different things. It really helped me dial in and drop it like it's hot, get a lot better at crafting my words. Just like any of us speakers first getting into it, everyone, we're kind of want, which, by the way, we all are refining, right? TEDx, because it's time, you have to be very succinct. So it really caused me to change my process, because I really had to dial in specifically my words, what would really align with the audience and what would really align with me. Second, it's memorized. And that added to the process as well that I'm going to go into. I don't usually memorize a lot of my speeches, you guys. I actually do go through my speeches for sure, and I have outlines, but I never really memorize. I have to say I memorize like 5% of the time, and the rest, I'm not saying is off the cuff, you guys, but I have something, and then I really organically go with the crowd. So that's the second part that was different in this process. The third part, before I go through the process, that's really important. The reason why I'm building this up, everyone, is because of this. The third is we're always sharing stories, you know, whether we're in conversation with other speeches, but with the TEDx, really often it's a culmination of one big thing that you just feel you want to need to give to the world that's so vital, and it requires you to go through a lot of your old stories from 0 years of age or 3 years of age, whatever your first memory is, to now. And what that takes you through the highs, the lows, the crying, the emotion, along with trying to craft a speech. So I really want to give the precursors of why I set a certain process, a creative process with the TEDx versus a regular speech, because it was different in those three aspects. I had to get more succinct, concise with my wording, which has helped me in a lot of my speeches now. It had to be memorized. And third, it took me through a high and low of really going through some of my old pains, my old stories, to actually bring to what I'm bringing to the stage. So that to me is what made it different for me and why the creative process was different. With those three things, what's my creative process? Everyone, I'm a practitioner by trade. I'm a physical therapist. I'm going to say this for everything that I give to a lot of my clients and myself. I'm going to say for speaking. I always move before I drop it like it's hot. Whether it be I'm coming up with an outline, I'm coming up with a major topic, it doesn't matter. When I got into my creative process, I did a lot of, I don't want to say hardcore anaerobic exercise, but a lot of movement, getting into nature, really grounding myself to the earth, making sure that I was eating well, sleeping well. Like, for me to tap into my creative power requires me to keep this temple very healthy and be very grounded and connected to it. So my whole creative process actually started with me doing walks in nature, eating and sleeping, and then having a Post-it by me if thoughts came up. Like, at first it was like throwing things on a wall, you guys. And I think that's really important to do if you're doing a TEDx, especially later in life, because you have a lot of stories. Like, what is the accumulation? So for me, it's moving, then having a Post-it nearby or my phone to drop down phrases or words or topics. And then what I do, everybody, is I throw that literally on a master wall. And I do this actually with a lot of my speeches, but definitely with this one. And I look at the accumulation of the topics, the ideas, the stories that have come up. And that's where I come up with the main thing, the main topic, the main in the TEDx. And I've done my second one as well. And I did this very similar process. Like, what am I feeling at this juncture that people really need to hear? That's not only powerful, but maybe a different angle than what they've heard. Because many things I believe are out there are not necessarily aligned to help people maximize their life. I truly believe that's what TEDx stages are for, is that you're giving new ideas of a better way to do things. Not that the old ways were bad, but a more better way to do it. So once I looked at my spaghetti wall, so to speak, that's when I came up with more of a theme of my topic, of the idea, the new idea, the twist on the idea of how to do a certain thing. And I know we're going to go into that, my first TEDx. And that's when I'm like, okay, now I have my topic. Now where do we go from there? That's when I started going through the outline, pulling in the different stories for the outline. And by the way, everyone, I want to be very clear, for me, the outline and pulling different stories, I got on the mat and then practiced. No, that didn't work, pulling a different story. No, that principle is kind of vague, pulling another story. This is where a coach, this is where mentors, kind of rebounding things off them is really important. I continue to move if I feel stuck. You guys, I'm a big believer in that. If you're feeling stuck on a TEDx and you feel like it's forced, you got to move some of that energy through. You really do. And I really find this in life, and not just in speaking in life, but when you're stuck on something, even in your business, but definitely in speaking, move. Get out and do something that helps ground you, move that block through, and then come back to the story. But what I did is I got into that outline and I went through it over and over again and changed out stories over and over again and changed out principles. Then from there, everyone, I wrote out the speech. Once I had that outline, I'm like, you know what? I think I have my core principles. I have my core stories. I know it was still malleable, but that's when I wrote out the speech. Now, not for all my other speeches do I always do that. For the TEDx, I 100% did, because obviously it needs to be memorized. But then from there, I did more drafts, you guys. Then I practiced it. And I'm a big believer, everyone, and this is just something I learned, is to speak it out loud, even if you haven't memorized it yet, because you can find your own glitches sometimes. Even before taking it to a coach, you feel like you're kind of stuck on something and it doesn't feel like a smooth transition. You're noticing I'm getting on the mat a lot. You're noticing I'm willing to be malleable in the process and not be stuck to one story or stuck to one outline. When I was more open to receiving, I'm telling you guys, that's what made the big difference, where I could get unstuck very quickly when I was starting to write out the full script and then practice it and then give it off to a coach or a colleague of mine that had done a TEDx and see what they thought. So that is kind of my, in a general nutshell, we can go into some of the deeper ones from that, how I went through it. And then I started cutting and refining because I wanted to get in a certain time frame. And then I started practicing more on my sisters, on my brothers, on my my coach, on everyone, hearing myself record. But the things that you're probably seeing from me is I moved a lot when I got stuck. I wasn't stuck and held die hard to one outline, one story, one process. I just got on the mat and practiced it and allowed ideas to creatively come to me. One thing I find that you don't want to do in a TEDx is push, 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 because you're feeling like the time crunch, you're feeling you have to memorize, but let it first just come through you. And that other memorization stuff just comes later, everyone. Don't get so stuck on that it has to be a certain way. And the final piece, I'll be careful. I'm just going to say this, be careful watching too many TEDx as you're getting ready for yours. I love TEDx. I support TEDx speakers. But the problem is sometimes you try to copy the way they speak, or you try to copy how they start the intro. You guys, this is why I talk about moving, grounding at first. Go within. You guys, your intuition, your inner knowledge is always going to give you the way to go, including in speaking. So be careful how much, I'm a big believer of the look, but it's just like going on social, you guys. Connect, support people, but be careful how much you look at other people's and get a little bit of blinders on, and trust mentors, trust people that are guiding you, because you can get a little bit messed in your head, and that's what can cause you to get stuck. It caused me to get stuck a little bit my first TEDx versus my second. Again, you guys, I learned a lot the first time to the second and how I refined it, which we can go into another time. But I'm saying that's probably the last piece I would say is be careful of looking at that stuff ahead of time and allow your creative process to go through. But that's my general creative process. Then we can go a little deeper on that if you'd like. But that's what worked well for me. And then I tweaked and kind of dialed in a few things, what I did right, what didn't feel as good going into my second TEDx.
Very nice. That is so helpful. I could probably chop that up into 15 videos. That was so good. You did like a list, like the top 3, like it was good, Jennifer. So thank you for that. So let's talk about the execution. Let's talk about being on the stage. Now I've been preparing for a long time. There's, usually a lot of lead up to it. So you're running this talk, preparing this talk, nurturing this idea, and now you're finally unleashing it and sharing it and shining your light on the world with the talk. So talk to me about actually being on the stage. Were you in a room waiting? Were you talking to people? Because that's one thing that came up for me is, do you want to be out talking to everyone, or do you want to just kind of lock in and prepare for the talk? Talk to me about your process with the execution.
So my process, that's pretty much the same whether I'm doing a regular speech or a TEDx, is I definitely go within. I don't do a lot of talking with people before. I have a whole speech prep. I do, depending on when my talk is, obviously, but I forgot what time my TEDx talks, my first one was, but I get up early enough where I do about 3 days leading up to a talk, a prep. The day of the talk, I'm definitely going within. I'm doing a lot of things to, more than anything, at that point, just get me in the zone. I usually exercise in the morning. I usually meditate in the morning, meditate specifically on the talk, what I want to come through me. I do a prayer to really allow me to create divine doors. And I mean, for the right people to listen and for me to respond. So I do a lot, about 3 to 4 hours leading up to that actual day, actually prepping myself and really going in. I'm an introvert, everyone, by trade. 90% of speakers actually are. I'm not saying all of them are. Tony Robbins is as well. But I am an introvert. So it's a natural thing for me to get ready to express that way anyway. But yeah, usually there's some type of exercise movement. There's meditation specifically, along with visualization on the talk, as well as prayer. And then about probably 10 minutes before the talk, I do a little, I don't want to say jumping jacks, but something a little bit to get me into the mode. I really speak out loud what I'm proclaiming and declaring is going to happen. And then I pray like 30 seconds before I get on stage. And I did no different than that for the TEDx, that I serve in the best way God thinks I need to serve today, and that whatever comes out of my mouth, because this memorize you guys, but I screwed up one or two lines there. I'm like, it's meant to come out in the way it's supposed to come out. So I try to really let go of being perfect. And in TEDx, it was harder because it was memorized versus some of my other but this one I was like, you know what, let go and let God. I will just be fully transparent with you guys. I had spoken already in quite a few smaller stages before TEDx. About 10 minutes, I went to the bathroom and I was freaking out a little bit because I realized my talk could reach millions. And it was the first time, everyone, I want to be very clear, that I started sharing more of my vulnerable, intimate story about loneliness, depression. Like, I never shared that much, and I'd never shared that much to potentially that many people. I had a freak out moment in the bathroom. I had to like sit with my, and connect with my coach real quick. I'm like freaking out right now. I'm giving something that's really vulnerable. I'd never done that, everyone. So to let you know, I did this whole 4-hour thing and I was feeling good. Then I'm like, why am I freaking out? Why am I so nervous? And it was what I realized I was doing. I was like walking on stage, what I felt like naked. I'm like, wow, this could be rejected. So it really hit me at that point. Looking back, everyone, and this is where I'm going to pull in a little bit my second TEDx. I had a coach for my second TEDx that helped me really move through a lot of that emotion of old abandonment, rejection, the fear of speaking because I had a speech impediment. Like, I learned a lot better ways to move through that, but because it was my first time, I didn't even realize it would actually be a thing. So for my second TEDx, I actually got some more support from like a speaker content, also the prep when things like that came up because of that emotionality can come from stuff like that. But with that said, that did come up, you guys, but I was able to obviously step back in. I have a lot of tools. I'm a practitioner by trade, so I have a lot of tools to move emotion through, get back in the game. I'm an athlete as well, so able to rise. But I have to tell you, everyone, that was a big thing for me. So I encourage anyone to really sit with that, like, because your talk can reach millions. I'm going to say that right now, everybody. And to navigate that, that's okay no matter how it comes out that day, that you can move through that and say, I'm here to serve. And no matter how it comes out, no matter who rejects it or responds to it, I'm here to serve. And that's something I had to move through a little bit on the day of the speech. But that's a little bit of my process, kind of getting on the stage. And then from that point, once I step on, to me, it's like, I'll use an athletic term because I was a track athlete. Once the gun goes off, I feel like I get in my zone of genius. And then in some ways I don't remember the talk because I just like take off, So once I'm there, I'm like, game on.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you shared the being an athlete piece, because for me, that's what it felt like. Even my prep, I felt like I was training, and it was really like a very, like, not just emotional, but it was also a physical process for me, like the way I was moving and all of that. So for me, I love as an athlete that you, I guess, harness some of that energy to execute your talk. Would that be fair to say?
100%, everyone. And again, as a PT, but now I do a lot of mental emotional wellness coaching, performance coaching for a lot of people. And it's funny, I work with a lot of people in their business and helping with leadership, and a lot of them want to speak right now, and a lot of them want to do TEDx, and a lot of them are past athletes. So there's this cross of me utilizing athletic prowess and mental edge, as well as other what I call mental emotional navigation states, because some of the stuff that, like I said, that gets brought up in a TEDx are more wounds, more pains, more things from past. So just rising as an athlete will not be your only tool. That kind of happens with game day. That's where I leverage that the most. But as far as some of the things I was navigating as I was creating the speech, where it was tanking me sometimes, like really emotionally, like, wow, kind of reliving some of, there's some other mentally emotional navigations that allow you to get through that more effectively. I help people shift their mental emotional states, not just for speaking, but for their business, when things like that get triggered from pains from your past. It's not just like I have to get up and rise and I'm an athlete. So I used a combination of both. And when I've worked with other people that want to speak, I've used a combination of both. There's a time to rise, be that athlete, step in mental edge. And there's also this point of ease and flow and navigating when things come up that are very painful and have been dark from you from the past, and knowing how to move through that, process it, and then give it more powerfully to the world. And those both are two separate types of mental edge mastery, but definitely I would say complement each other, and something I not only teach, I not only preach, but also integrate myself. And I did it in the TEDx talk as well.
Mm. So talk to me about life after TEDx, specifically after your first talk. What changed for you? How did it impact you as a professional, as a human? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely I'll call it from a speaking sense and ultimately business sense. So I get a lot of my clients from my speaking gigs. I definitely get some from social, but a lot from speaking gigs. And that opened up doors for me. And you guys, I'm going to say this, there's a lot of other ways to open doors to get into other speaking gigs, but there is still something about that TEDx stamp, that when they see you've done a TEDx and they see you've done a professional stage like that, it did start opening up doors for me for their speaking stages where I could share other parts of my wisdom. And I love being on stage, you guys. And I'm just going to say that out loud for any of you that feel like I shouldn't say that because it's pompous, or you guys, if it's your gifting, sometimes people just want to do TEDx because it's one story, drop it like it's hot, and they don't want to speak anymore. But if you're like, no, I actually want to go further with it, you guys, if you feel it's a gift of yours and it's a calling of yours, that is a gift. Someone has to do it, just like someone has to lead and some people follow. There's a point to that. And I find I light up on stage. I see people transform on stage. I get clients from stage because that's where I light up, right? So for TEDx, it really opened the doors for me for other speaking opportunities and ultimately pulling into my business for working with amazing high performers and business leaders, mid-sized to corporate, to really help them shift their mentally emotional state, create a healthy performance, and really lead in a more powerful way. So that's the first thing that TEDx did for me. But honestly, from a deeper level, I will say, so that's like making more money, getting my message out there, getting on speaking gigs. That was great. But for me, what I realized looking back of how much it healed things for me, how I actually was showing up differently with my clients, with my family, with my intimate partners, with my coaches, how I was speaking differently, more powerfully, more my truth, personally, professionally. I mean, I literally am getting goosebumps talking about it. Like I didn't realize, I realized like, this is what I want, more speaking stages. I didn't realize how I was going to show up differently as a human being. And I will say that really was the unexpected. This was like, this is what I see. And by the way, everyone, it's not just about getting on speaking stages, but I knew my business and what I wanted to get from it. And I knew I wanted my TEDx to reach the world because I felt like it was such a needed topic. But I didn't realize how much it was going to continue to evolve me and change me. And my second one even did even more evolution and more transformation. And so I will say for anyone that wants to do a TEDx, whether you want to get more speaking stages or you just want to bring a message to the world, be open and prepared that it's going to change you massively to your core if you allow it in a very powerful way.
Mm. So I gotta unpack the athlete piece a little bit more, just because it feels like when you said that many of your clients are business owners who are former athletes, and then I think about the topic of your first talk and how loneliness was such an important part of it, and you shared all of this data and information around it and framed it in a way that it was really academic, but also very personal and intimate. Talk to me about, as an athlete, right? As an athlete who's gone on to be a TEDx speaker, but also a business owner. Was there a point when you finished with your athletic career that you were like, maybe that's a part of the loneliness? Am I right there? Because I feel like that's got to be something. You're an all-American athlete, and then you're like a civilian, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that transition, and was there any loneliness there?
Yeah, the loneliness for me, and I shared a little bit of that in the first TEDx, and it's evolved even as I've unpacked more things. But what I find, I've been a high performer all my life. I talked about this in my second TEDx, and it was really geared toward high performer leaders. But even the first one, you guys, I've always been a high performer. I've always wanted to master things, always. So I've always been a person that's wanted to move to the top. And not because I wanted to be better than people, but it's just my natural thing. I want to be the best. I want to also be a leader. And the reason why I mention that, many people that are drawn to work with me have a similar story, whether they were an athlete and they mastered and they got to the top, or they led in something and they were at the top. You guys, the top can be very lonely. Okay, often you're there by yourself. I've learned through the years to find mentors and communities, but when I was young, I was like, I didn't have a lot, and I was also struggling with depression. I was connecting performance in leading to being perfect and also being loved. Okay, I was like, if I don't do well at something, I won't be acknowledged, I won't be loved. So I had this deep depression, loneliness too. Like, how do I stay here and do this and be alone at the top? But also, I felt like I was alone if I didn't perform well. And like, would people reject me, and I would literally be alone. I was afraid of being alone. So there's this real thing of being alone at the top as an athlete, as a leader. There's also this fear of being alone, as in rejected, because of what I was starting to connect to performance and leading, to be perfect, to do well all the time, to win. And if I don't, I won't be loved. And by the way, I want to be very clear, everyone. I had a great growing up, but as children, we have limited tools, and I viewed the world a certain way. And I became successful in a lot of things in my life at an early age. And I started connecting performance to love and significance. So for me, and what I find with a lot of leaders and a lot of past athletes, is that there's this either fear of loneliness because of fear of rejection if they don't do well, or second, they truly are lonely because they're at the top and they don't know how to handle that, and they haven't found the resources, the community to actually, find people to help support them at the top, or maybe other 1% leaders or 1% performers. So at a young age, I had a lot of depression and loneliness behind the thought of being rejected, being alone, and also actually physically being alone at the top. And through my own journey, and something I learned even going into my second TEDx, I started finding the real true meaning of what true wellness was, mind and body, and how you don't have to be alone, but there's actually beauty in being alone if you have a good relationship to it. And you also don't have to be alone if you know how to access powers outside. So my first TEDx was really understanding the value of being alone and tapping into your unique creative power, but going beyond that, even into some of my second TEDx's and looking at performance, that you don't have to be alone, that you can actually create so much power just by being you, stepping into just a higher level of resilience of who you really are. But that's what I would say with loneliness, and that's what I find actually with a lot of athletes. You guys, we see it in the Michael Phelps. He was like, how many Olympic gold medals, and he was behind closed doors talking about depression and loneliness, and he was like, no, because this is and he was always at the top. So I saw through some of his books some of those two key points I'm talking about with loneliness and kind of being lonely at the top with the two things I mentioned. So I've learned to journey through that. I made a TEDx about one of those components, about how you can really tap into being alone in a powerful way and our creative power. But also later in life, some of my talks about how you can move out of loneliness, even though you're a high performer at the top, and how to do that in a more powerful way. And that's just been my journey since the first TEDx of really evolving what loneliness is and how we can optimize it for a creative power, but also move through it if there's a dysfunction there of performance and being an athlete and being at the top and feeling so alone, and how you can move through that and really find your people to really navigate this life, because we can't do it alone.
I got one more question for you, Jennifer. There's an athlete out there right now who is transitioning. Maybe they're moving into their career, starting their business, but they know that they have an idea that they want to share, but they don't believe that they're good enough to get selected for a TEDx talk. What would you say to them right now?
Man, you guys, we say so much BS to ourselves. We just do. A TEDx is no different. I know it sounds daunting because we've said it's competitive. And you guys, I see people with less speaking experience get on the TEDx stage. And you know why? They have a story to tell. Okay. I really believe if you get in the quietness, and I will say this, get in the darkness of a room, get in the quietness where you are by yourself, get away from the noise of the world and really sit in silence. Listen to this body brilliance, okay? I talk about all the time in my other talks I do. Body decides, brain executes, okay? Let the body tell you what it wants to do. And if you ask it, like, should I speak on a TEDx stage, and it's saying yes, and it expands you on all levels, and all your 5 senses just feel all this energy, that's your body saying freaking yes. Step in. You don't need any accolades. You don't need any experience. You don't need, if your body is saying this is at this juncture in your life, this is your sole purpose, get on the stage. I'm telling you right now, every TEDx speaker, even the ones that are big experts in speaking, those that are not, when they got on the TEDx stage, all they did was make the decision and the step came later. And then the step came later as far as getting the applications and refining the speech. You guys make the decision if it is on your heart. That is the best information I could give you, because everything else gets easy from there. The people, the places, the opportunities, the creative zone for the TEDx will come once you make the call, once you make the decision. And that's true, honestly, you guys, not just with TEDx, with everything in my life, it's been that way. And I believe that anybody's listening to this right now, if you feel called, I'm just inviting you in. Go for it. Connect with Robin, connect with me, connect with people that will support and rally around you, because you're going to need those people that believe in you as you craft it. But you can do this. You guys, there's a reason why people in this world do amazing things. And all of them, when I've interviewed any of them, will never say it was because I had natural speaking skills or I had natural leadership skills. Or no, you guys, I'm telling you, you become the person you need to be by starting the becoming. Okay, just getting on the mat. The Michael Jordans spend hours, failing before they get up there. Kobe Bryant would always say, the reason why I'm going to beat everybody is because I work harder, not because I'm better technically at my core. I'm going to say the same thing to you guys. Make the decision. Then the people, places are going to come to you, and then get on the mat and practice, and it will come. Stop listening to the noise of the world. Listen here. Listen here. And once it says yes, freaking respond and say, I am in. Get your people to help navigate it for you. When you want to renege, say, oh my gosh, I got myself in the belief, just step in, you guys. And that's probably the best advice I can give you with the TEDx, because it's going to seem intimidating because it's TEDx. But at the end of the day, it's just you and your story that we need out there. And I'm telling you right now, when you get calls and texts from people, and this is what makes me cry, Jennifer, your story kept me from wanting to take my life. If it affects one person that way, my story, game over. It was worth it and then some. Nothing else. So I'm going to encourage you guys, if it even gets you on that stage and you affect one person in a profound way that you help them shift their life, transform their life, save their life, man, you guys, it would actually be a disservice for you not to step in. I'll just put it that way.
That is something that several of our guests have said, that it's selfish. Mm-hmm. It's selfish for you to keep your ideas and your stories to yourself, because it might save someone's freaking life. And 100%. That part we don't talk about enough. So I'm so glad that you said that, because it's like, it's a common theme here that the reason they need to get on the mat is because that they can actually save someone's life. And
100%.
So listen, Jennifer, you can have a minute here if you like. I'm going to share all of the links in the show notes for the audio podcast as well as the YouTube version of the show. But if you want to just tell people where they can check out your new talk, or if there's something that you have going on right now, the floor is yours. You can talk about it.
Absolutely. If you guys have any questions on this episode, I help a lot of speakers too. And if you just have additional questions on what we went through, I'm the most active on LinkedIn and on Instagram, but most active actually on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me there, you can look at my website, Jennifer Watson Leadership. You can check out some of the other talks I've done. And yes, I've done 2 separate talks. One was on optimizing your creative power. And we did talk a lot about loneliness on that one. My second one just came out on the chemistry of resilience. And I would love you guys to watch both of them, because you will also see my evolution of some things that have come through me, and something I know Robin and I probably get back on and talk about how it shifted a little bit for my second versus my first TEDx. But I would be honored to have you watch it. What were some of your takeaways? What were some things that helped shift you? Because for me, I'm doing my calling of helping give you tools and frameworks to transform your life. And I'm here to support you, whatever that looks like. So do not hesitate to connect with me, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And we're doing seasons. So this is our first season. We're going to take a little bit of a break in between seasons. But will you come back to talk about your second talk for season 2?
100% I will. Game on.
We're going to get on the mat.
Yes,
Thank,
get on that.
thank you, Jennifer.